the HOA war that freed our family. The lake shimmered under the late summer sun, its calm surface hiding the storm brewing in our quiet Wisconsin neighborhood. I'm Tom Harrison, a 52-year-old retired contractor, and all I wanted was to welcome my son, Matt, home after 18 months deployed in the Middle East. Our family cabin on Lake Winnebago was supposed to be his sanctuary, a place to heal after serving our country. But Margaret Klein, the iron-fisted president of our homeowners association, had other plans. What started as a simple homecoming prep turned into a battle that exposed a decade-long conspiracy and changed our community forever. It all began with a single email from the Willow Creek HOA board. All property modifications require prior approval, it read, citing some obscure rule from the 200-page community handbook. I'd been hauling Matt's old high school football gear, his dog-eared Tom Clancy novels, and his pressed Army uniform into the cabin. Hardly a modification, I thought, tossing the email aside. Matt deserved to come home to familiarity, to the creaky porch swing where he'd kissed his high school sweetheart, to the view of the lake where he'd learned to cast a line. I wasn't about to let bureaucracy ruin that. But Margaret wasn't just any HOA president. At 65, she ruled Willow Creek like a small-town dictator, her sharp blue eyes missing nothing. She'd been widowed for years, living in a pristine colonial across the street, and her obsession with standards bordered on mania. That first week, as I arranged Matt's room, she'd stop by daily, her clipboard in hand, noting concerns about my truck parked too long in the driveway or the unauthorized American flag I'd hung on the porch for Matt's return. Community guidelines, Tom, she'd say with a smile that never reached her eyes. I brushed it off, chalking it up to her need for control. Big mistake. The real trouble started one crisp September morning. I was carrying Matt's duffel bag to the porch when sirens pierced the quiet. Two police cruisers screeched into my driveway, lights flashing. Four officers stepped out, hands on their belts, and the lead sergeant, a grizzled man named Carter, fixed me with a stern look. "Sir, we got a call about a suspicious individual breaking into this property. Need your ID and proof you belong here." My stomach dropped. This was my home, bought by my father in the 60s, where I'd raised Matt and his sister. "I live here," I said, my voice tight with disbelief. "I'm getting my son's room ready. He's coming home from the Army in 10 days. I handed over my license, my hands shaking with humiliation as neighbors peeked from their windows. The officers inspected Matt's duffel, revealing his uniform with SGTM Harrison stitched on it. Their faces softened. "Thank you for his service," Carter said, tipping his hat. "Sorry for the mix-up." As they left, I caught a glimpse of Margaret watching from her porch, her expression unreadable. That night, I got a call from Matt. His voice crackled over the spotty connection. "Dad, I heard sirens last time we talked. Everything okay?" I forced a laugh, not wanting to worry him. "Just small-town drama, son. Focus on getting home." But I couldn't shake the unease. Why had Margaret called the cops? What was she after? The answer came the next day when a $250 citation arrived for causing a public disturbance. The report claimed I'd been acting suspiciously and failed to identify myself to police. It was a lie, and it felt personal. I turned to my neighbor, Frank, a 70-year-old Vietnam vet who'd lived in Willow Creek for decades. Over coffee on his back porch, he lowered his voice. "Tom, you're not the first. The Thompsons, a nice couple with 3 kids, went through this 2 years ago. Margaret buried them in fines $500 for a crooked mailbox, $1,000 for a shed an inch too tall. They owed $20,000 and had to sell. Guess who bought their house dirt cheap? Margaret's cousin, Leonard." The pieces started clicking. Frank pulled out a faded photo from his wallet. "Recognize this?" It was a young Margaret, arm in arm with my older brother, Greg, at a charity gala 20 years ago. They were engaged, Frank said, until Greg caught her skimming funds from a veterans charity. He reported her, and she did 8 months in the county lockup. She's hated your family ever since. My jaw tightened. Margaret had moved to Willow Creek 5 years ago, wormed her way into the HOA presidency, and now she was using her power to settle an old score. Matt's homecoming was her perfect chance to strike. The harassment escalated. Margaret sent emails demanding financial records for unapproved renovations, meaning Matt's furniture. She scheduled a mandatory property inspection, threatening a lien if I didn't comply. One night, I caught a glint from her window binoculars, trained on my cabin. She was watching me. I felt trapped, like a deer in a hunter's scope. Matt's calls grew more frequent, his voice tinged with worry. "Dad, you sound off. What's going on?" I lied again, hating myself for it. "Just paperwork, son. It'll be fine." But it wasn't fine. The inspection was a 3-hour ordeal. Margaret, Leonard, and another board member scoured my property, citing violations that were pure fiction: grass too long by a quarter-inch, porch paint non-compliant with the HOA's color chart, even a $500 fine for a birdhouse Matt had built in middle school. By the end, I faced $18,000 in fines, with 30 days to pay or lose the cabin. Margaret's parting shot cut deep. It'd be a shame if Matt came home to a foreclosed house. Soldiers deserve better, don't they? I was furious, but I wasn't done. Frank had been keeping records of Margaret's schemes: every fine, every police call, every family she'd driven out. I requested the HOA's financials, citing my rights as a homeowner. Margaret sent a locked PDF, thinking I'd give up. She didn't know I had friends from my contracting days. A buddy at the county tax office decrypted the files in an hour, and what I found was staggering. Over 4 years, Margaret had funneled $400,000 to Pristine Gardens LLC, a landscaping company owned by Leonard. Invoices billed $50,000 for ornamental shrub alignment and $30,000 for seasonal topsoil enhancement, work that never happened. Each payment lined up with Leonard buying another Willow Creek property at a fraction of its value. It was a racket. Margaret targeted families, drowned them in fines, forced them to sell, and Leonard swooped in. The HOA was her weapon, and we were her prey. But then, my wife, Karen, found a game changer. While cleaning the attic, she uncovered a dusty box labeled "Property of William Harrison, 1962. Inside was a county land covenant from 1963, signed and sealed, declaring our cabin exempt from any HOA control. My father had bought the land to escape regulations, and his foresight was about to save us. Armed with the covenant and Margaret's financial records, I headed to the county clerk's office. The clerk, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, confirmed the exemption was still valid. "Any HOA action against your property is illegal," she said, handing me certified copies. "Show these at the next meeting. If they don't back off, they're breaking state law." The HOA had called a community meeting to vote on placing a lien on my cabin, a public shaming Margaret hoped would crush me. The Willow Creek Community Center was packed, the air thick with tension. Margaret opened with a slick presentation, projecting photos of my violations and preaching about protecting property values. The crowd murmured, some nodding along, others skeptical. Then I stood. "Before you vote, you need to know the truth." I held up the land covenant. "This document, signed in 1963, exempts my property from HOA control. Every fine, every threat, every citation from Margaret is illegal." Gasps rippled through the room. Margaret scoffed. "That's irrelevant." But I wasn't done. "Margaret's targeting my family because 20 years ago, my brother exposed her for stealing from a veterans charity. She went to jail and swore revenge." The room erupted in whispers. I laid out the financials, projecting invoices for fake landscaping jobs. "Margaret and her cousin Leonard have stolen $400,000 from this HOA. They find families until they're broke, then buy their homes cheap. The Thompsons, the Wilsons, the Garcias Three, all victims of this scam." Neighbors shouted, demanding proof. I passed out copies of the invoices, and the mood shifted from shock to outrage. Margaret's composure cracked. "These are lies," she shrieked, but Leonard was already slipping toward the exit. Then Linda, the county clerk, stepped forward. "I'm here to confirm Mr. Harrison's property is exempt. The HOA's actions are illegal, and we're investigating their finances for fraud." Margaret's face drained of color. A neighbor yelled, "We want our money back." Another called for her resignation. The vote flipped no lean, but a 25-1 vote of no confidence in Margaret, with her vote the only one in her favor. She broke down, sobbing. "Greg ruined my life. I lost everything because of him. I just wanted justice." But her confession only fueled the crowd's anger. As police were called to investigate the embezzlement, I walked out feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Margaret's empire was crumbling, and my family was safe. 5 days later, Matt's taxi pulled into the driveway. He stepped out in his dress uniform, his grin wide despite the lines of exhaustion on his face. We hugged, and for a moment, the world was right again. That evening, we sat on the porch, the lake glowing under the sunset. Heard Margaret's selling her house to cover legal fees, Matt said, sipping a beer. I nodded. She's facing charges. The community's suing for restitution. Matt looked out at the water. What if I hadn't made it back, Dad? Would it have been worth the fight? I squeezed his shoulder. You're why I fought. This cabin, this lake height's our legacy. No one's taking that from us. Frank walked by, his old lab trailing behind. Seeing Matt, he raised a salute. Matt returned it, and Frank hoisted an American flag on his porch, the first in years. The cabin felt like home again, free from Margaret's shadow. She'd spent 20 years plotting revenge, but her greed undid her. The HOA dissolved, replaced by a voluntary neighborhood council. Justice wasn't just served, it rebuilt our community. What do you think? Have you ever faced bullying or injustice in your own life? Share your stories in the comments below. Do you think Margaret deserved her fate, or was she a victim of her pain? Let's debate. Stand up for what you believe in, and tell us where you draw the line on fighting back.